You are listening to the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast. Here are Brad, Lisa, Brian, and Darren.
Welcome to another edition of the It Modcast podcast. Joining us is Brian Young, the Turtle Dork.
Happy Friday. This is Friday. It's
Yay!
Friday, right?
Yeah, it is
Friday. Friday. Happy Friday.
Yes. Also joining us is Lisa Gullickson, wife dork.
But Brian, we have 10 in our thing, so it's a double fist.
Oh, that's right.
Fisting,
Oh, that's
Fistful
right.
Friday.
We're double fisting. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Gotta prepare myself.
And also joining us is Brad Gullickson, mouth dork.
I'm not sure I approve of all this double fisting happening between Lisa and Brian.
I do, because I'm Darren Smith, the double fisting disco dork.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but I mean double fisting like Cheyenne fat.
Oh, nice.
And doves. I have doves. I'm double fisting doves. And welcome to the It Modcast.
Messy.
It Modcast podcast, Fistful Friday.
Woo!
And this Friday, we have a very special fistful. As you may have heard, this is a double-fisted fistful. As Lisa said, instead of our top 5, we've got our top 10. Or, to be more specific, our not top 10. Brad Gullickson, I know this is one of your favorite episodes. So
I look forward to this every year.
for the newly initiated, tell them what it is.
So we're building to our epic podcast that is The Dorkies.
And what are those?
And that's our top 10 films of the year.
Yes.
This is our not top 10 films of the year. And I think that list means different things for different dorks.
Mhm.
For me, what you're going to see in my list are some of the films that almost made my top 10. You're going to discover what my most hated film of the year is.
Mm.
You're going to discover what my most disappointing film of the year is.
Mm.
So these are just movies that came out this year that I think deserve some conversation.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Would you all agree, wife dork and turtle?
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Yep,
Absolutely.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
I love preparing for this
So fun,
because
right?
this really, it's a push to get my top 25 together.
Mm.
So I was like going through this year, going through my letterbox and going through and finding all of my 3.5 and up movies. And I compiled my top 25, which consists of 44 movies. I have 44 movies on my top 25 as of right now. And you're going to be hearing about many of them and a few of them that didn't even make it into my top 44.
Letterbox is a very invaluable tool when it comes to doing something like your top 10 or your not top 10.
Tell me
Brian,
about it.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I've been on Letterboxd more the last couple of weeks than I have all year.
All right. Well, let the people know what the fruits of your labor are with your number. I was about to say 5. You're number 10.
I know. So it's weird. Like you were saying, Lisa, compiling these lists. There's no real rhyme or reason in how I kind of orchestrate and put this list together, and it's kind of sporadic as far as like the type of films I have on here. I know, Brad, you like to, as we get closer, you'll show us your most hated film or most disappointed film. I think a lot of my movies are movies that just are like between my 30 to 10, and I got a couple of like disappointments and bad movies. I think I'm gonna start with a bad movie, and this is up there as probably one of the worst movies I've seen this year. I wouldn't even categorize this as a disappointment. This is just a bad film, and this is a late arrival to my list. So this would be The Mummy, starring one Tom Cruise.
Damn, that did come out this year.
Yeah,
I know I
yeah.
blocked it out.
Yeah.
Mentally blocked that shit
I'm
out.
sorry, and I'm sorry to bring it back up, but I did want to just mention, because this movie was just atrocious. It just did not work on any level as far as what they were trying to do with this film. And it's so weird because everybody nowadays, they want to build these cinematic universes. And I think this movie is a prime example of why you don't try to basically put the cart before the horse. You have to just, and Marvel explains this. There was an interview with Kevin Feige where he talks about, of course we want to build out this universe, but you have to make a good movie first. And I think the problem with The Mummy is that they do too much setup with wanting to show you, like, oh, here's the creature from the Black Lagoon. Oh, here's Russell Crowe as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which none of that stuff works. And then tonally, this movie is all over the place. I mean, it wants to be a comedy. It wants to be scary. It wants to be an action movie. I mean, this movie is just schizo. It's all over the place. And for me, I usually enjoy my theater going experiences, but that would never like come into play as far as like how I'll see the movie overall. And I think, to be honest with you, I can't remember if I enjoyed this in the theater or not. But all I can remember about this film is that it doesn't work in any stage of this film. I think Tom Cruise is wildly miscast in this movie. Jack Johnson, his partner in this, I don't like their chemistry. The only good thing I can really say is that I like Sofia Boutella as the Mummy, and even then, I think they kind of botch her character up and her origin and her motivation, and it's just. Oh God. Okay. Yeah, I'm actually glad I did this first because I just want to get this movie out the way. So yeah, number 10 is The Mummy.
All right, B, what you got?
You mean Lisa?
No. Oh, sorry, Lisa. That's
Oh
right.
yeah.
It's okay. I was being such a great listener. You forgot I existed.
Lisa, you're number 10.
My number 10. So generally, now that we've done this a couple of times, I've done this a couple of times. I've got kind of a formula going on of what creates a really fantastic not top 10. And I always start with a movie that I don't think I'm going to get a chance to talk about before the end of the year that I've seen recently. And for me, this year, it's I, Tonya.
Yes.
Oh,
so
okay.
I actually got to see that in the theater with the Secret Society of Film blah, 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 blah. I just talked about Star Wars for 2 hours, and I'm talking about Secret Society of Filmation / Victory screening, and I did not get a chance to watch it before the I, Tonya bonus review cast. So I came away from it feeling mirroring a lot of the feelings that you guys had about this film. I think that casting-wise, these actors are working at the peak of their skill. They give like amazing performances. Of course, Margot Robbie as Tonya Harding, but even Sebastian Stan as Jeff Gillooly. And finding something to because he's playing this despicable human being, but that he's so profoundly stupid. I don't know. But it's almost like I don't know. And then Allison Janney as Ivana, absolutely amazing, devastating, cold woman, makes you wonder. It's just a really amazing performance. But I agree with the overall view that it has a very discomforting tone. That it's a really uncomfortable film. I mean, and I followed you guys' advice and the advice of Andy Geierson. Just watch it like it's not a comedy. Don't watch it like the trailer is trying to sell it as like this funny romp about this thing that happened. I really went in anticipating it being not funny, being a sad story, and I still found it tonally off-putting. And I'm not saying that that's bad necessarily, and I'm not saying that that's not what the film is going for. It just comes down to, do I want to feel this way? Do I want this story told to me, Lisa Gullickson, in this fashion? And so I gave it a 3. I think that it's a good movie, a solid film,
Mhm.
but not something that I came away loving necessarily.
Yeah.
But the thing that stood out most to me was that Brian, the face replace is horrible. And, and aggravated by the fact that they show the face of the woman who plays her body double in the film. So not only do you see when it's not Margot Robbie's face, her ghost face hovering over another woman's face, you recognize the lady. You go, oh, it's that lady again. Instead of Margot Robbie. And I would not have noticed if you had not sung the praises of the face.
I mean, look, I'm the same person that couldn't tell that Tarkin in Rogue One wasn't a CGI character. And granted, I did see this on my computer. Doesn't have a great screen. So and it has the watermark of Brad's email address over it.
Shh!
Okay.
I was not sharing screeners. No, not guilty.
No. But no.
I don't mean to throw you under the bus, but I mean, it's like one of those things where it goes, I cannot believe I'm bringing this up, that it goes back to La La Land, where I wouldn't have noticed that Ryan Gosling is not playing the piano if people didn't praise him for playing the piano. You know, I never really would have thought about it, but like my eye was trained into it. I don't know. I think that, you know, we're not there yet with the face replace, but Margot Robbie is there as an amazing actress and the rest of the cast. But I just didn't dig the tone of the film, and I don't like the domestic violence in the film was necessary to this story, but like really oddly handled. I don't know. It was very painful. It was very painful, and I'm going, is this borderline disrespectful? I have no idea.
Yeah.
It was really just really unsettling. So that's my number 10.
All right. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Brad, your number 10.
So my number 10 on my not top 10 movies of the year is also The Mummy. I don't think I disliked it as much as Brian did, but I was certainly disappointed, and I'm even more disappointed that this dark universe, this shared universe, for the third time has failed. Because I do believe that the Universal monsters could be strung together in a really fun and interesting way.
I agree.
The way that you saw, you know, in one of my favorites, the Monster Squad or something along those lines, you could build to an Avengers-like event with these characters.
Yeah.
But this version of The Mummy is so dull. And, you know, casting Tom Cruise, and I love Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
I love him more than most.
No secret.
Casting him, what maybe wasn't necessarily my problem, but transforming the Mummy into this action vehicle for his uber arrogant asshole mercenary just did not work. And his chemistry with Annabelle Wallace as his, you know, not girlfriend, but his potential conquest, as this film plays it to be, is absent and kind of icky. His relationship with his buddy Jake Johnson it was also non-existent and terrible. And when they bring Jake back as a Griffin Dunn-like ghoul, a la American Werewolf in London, he could not succeed in that tone the way that John Landis did. And then really it all comes down to director Alex Kurtzman. You know, this was his first big film, and he could not hold the pieces together. And, you know, there's 3 names on this screenplay. I'm sure there's a dozen more writers behind those 3 names. They just could not make it work because I don't think they knew what they wanted. They have these characters and they want an Avengers film. But the reality is these are monster movies, and you could string it all together, but you got to keep in tone with those creations. And Sofia Boutella as the Mummy was kind of interesting. I love her; she's so wonderful in, Star Trek Beyond and Kingsman and Atomic Blonde too.
Yeah.
But it ultimately did work because I feel like the writing wasn't there, the direction wasn't there, the thought wasn't there. I will say I did love Russell Crowe's Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I think he certainly was the best thing in this movie, and he knew what type of movie he was in. He was having a lot of fun.
That's fine. I don't mind the character, but as far as like using him and just shoving all this stuff to try to build this universe out in just this one singular film.
Yeah, I agree.
It just felt like his character was shoehorned in there just to say, "Hey, look what we're trying to do." And to me, that's the reason I didn't really respond to Russell Crowe's character. Not saying that he was bad or the idea of having Jekyll and Hyde is bad, but just how they used him.
There was a news story about how Guillermo del Toro was a little disappointed that he didn't spearhead this, that he had an opportunity to be the Kevin Feige of this universe.
Oh my God, that was amazing.
Yeah, maybe it would have. I'm certain he could do something better than what we got here. But you know what? He kind of did that with The Shape of Water. He took the creature from the Black Lagoon story and he did his take on it. Oh, yeah. And, that's what they should have been doing with this series instead of trying to shove another studio's superhero film into their own characters.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, this version of The Mummy did not understand what they have, what the appeal of the Mummy as a device, and the appeal of their stable of characters.
Yeah.
This is so bizarre. I feel like I'm listening to two people talk about a dream I had. Like, I do not remember this movie at all. Coming back to me. I looked it up on my letterbox. I gave it 3 stars. I liked it. Okay.
Guess what? I own it on Blu-ray.
God damn it!
Whoa!
I know.
Explain yourself, Brian.
I just buy movies. I don't know.
So many better movies. You just took a huge dump on it on yours.
I know. Exactly. Exactly. That's.
I'm gonna start sending you a list of good movies for you to buy.
Oh no, I have some good movies.
Do you have Brixby Bear?
Yes, actually, I just bought that. I have Brixby Bear.
Okay. All right.
Brian does his best to maintain balance in the universe. He has some good movies
Exactly.
too. All right, my number 10. So what I'm gonna do is like Brad. I have movies that I just did not like or I loathed this year, but I also have movies that I really enjoyed, but for whatever reason just did not make my top 10. So I'm gonna break it down. I'll do my top 5 that I just disappointed me this year, and then my top 5 that I really enjoyed but didn't quite make the cut. So I'll get the bad out of the way first. Number 5 most disappointing movie of the year, or movie that I just did not have a good time with, is unfortunately The Fate of the Furious. It's no secret I was a fan of this franchise from the original movie. Unlike Brad, who came in like when The Rock, was it Tokyo Drift that you started to come around?
No, Fast 5 was it, but I went back and I fell in love with Tokyo Drift.
Gotcha. Like it's been mentioned before, like I was a fan of the franchise from the beginning, but I have not been a fan of where they've taken it. In this most recent film, just the storyline of, let me see if I can remember this correctly. The storyline of Vin Diesel fathering a kid and then having to. Then he had to go rescue the kid, the little baby. Or he had to go rescue the girl.
I mean, you have Charlize Theron.
Oh yeah, so he had to turn his
and
back on his family and all that other craziness. And then there's a sub in there somewhere. And then Jason Statham takes an awesome jetpack, onto an airplane. And then the movie turns into like the transporter for a moment. And then Yeah, so I don't know. Like, there's no secret that the Fast and the Furious franchise, especially with the Rock's introduction into the series with number five, they've been all about escalation and how can we top the previous movie. And for me, it isn't so much about the stunts that they've been topping. It's just the absurdness of the storyline, and they're getting away from the
Hmm.
characters. We talked about it in our review cast, and my complaint is they always talk about family. Like they say family every other word, every other line of dialogue in the films have the word family in it. But for me, they say it. The more they say it, the less they show it. And so now it's just become like this silly. And then not that it wasn't already silly, but I have no connection to the characters anymore. So I'm not having any fun on the ride. So unfortunately, Fate of the Furious did not live up to what I would want from one of these films. So that's my number 10, my
Yeah.
not top 10. What do you got, B, for your number 9?
So my number nine, I'm gonna go with a category as far as probably the most shocking
Mm.
film, most disturbing film, and the film that I keep and I've talked about this before. It shocks me, it disturbs me, but yet I'm so fascinated by this movie. And we talked about how I just picked the Mummy up on Blu-ray, and I'm deciding if I even want to pick this one up. But it's Mother, and
Mm.
Mother was just a film that I literally, almost from the opening frame to the end, my jaw was dropped. I just could not believe uh, what I was watching, how this movie just escalated, and then just wrapping my head around what this movie, what Darren Aronofsky was trying to say with this film. Of course, after watching this film and then thinking about it for a while, you see the biblical allegories and fables that he's telling in this story, and the bigger picture as far as like this being kind of like his he's just kind of just trying to express his anger and how he sees the world today, and putting all of that into this film. I like the idea, and you talk about this a lot, Darren, as far as like having filmmakers just really express themselves without censorship and appreciating what they do, whether we like it or not. Just the simple fact that if he has something on his mind or on his heart that he wants to put on the screen, for better or for worse, and people did not respond to this film. But for whatever reason, I just got drawn to this movie, even though a lot of the imagery in this movie is hard to watch, especially with the whole baby stuff. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. Well, I'm not. Well, yeah, but it's this movie just escalates and goes places that I just was not expecting at all. Uh, but it speaks of so many interesting things. Again, aside from the biblical allegories, just the whole thing with Mother Nature as well, and how we as human beings are destroying the earth and things like that. And at some point, Mother Nature is going to turn against us, So it's speaking to a lot of these different things that I just found fascinating. But Aronofsky just wraps it into this very disturbing and just creepy and eerie film. Even now, sitting with this film for the last couple of months, I still don't know how I feel about it, but I just can't stop thinking about it.
How many
So
times have you
yeah.
seen it?
I've only seen it the once, and I don't even know if I could watch this film again. I want to, but yeah, yeah. This movie is wild. It's wild.
All right. So, wife Dork, what is your number 9?
My number 9 is also a movie that fascinated me and challenged me. And it was not necessarily like that good a movie, but what it aspired to, and the kind of cultural aspect that it's trying to pick away at, I think was very interesting. And that is the movie Suburbicon.
Oh, I
Oh,
missed
Yeah.
that. I missed that one.
I
Yeah.
I
was
think
gonna
a
say
lot of
Underworld.
Oh, I missed out on Underworld.
Dang.
I'm sad to say. But Suburbicon was directed by George Clooney.
Hmm.
But with the script from the Coen brothers. And the feeling of it is Coen brothers adjacent, but it just doesn't quite get all of the way there to where, like, the Coen brothers can play in this uncomfortable place, this place of inner conflict very, very well, you know, and in a very engaging way where they really have a tone, where they really have a voice. And we get some of that, you know, and George Clooney is very immersed in that Coen brothers world. We've seen him in Coen brothers films. We've also seen films that he's directed. And his films tend to have a nostalgic sheen to them. He loves a period film. So this film takes place in 1959, and the movie opens with the first black family moving into this very exclusive white neighborhood, and all of the neighbors are not happy when the Myers move in. Meanwhile, there's the Lodge family who lives right next door, and the father, who is played by Matt Damon, Gardner Lodge, is not happy with his, like, Norman Rockwell family that he has. His wife has become disabled. He has, through a tragic accident, he's kind of lost interest in her, and he wants to be with his wife's twin sister. So he starts. So the film opens with him scheming to have these two goons come to his house and fake a kidnapping, fake a robbery, and murder his wife. And so as this story plays out, it starts out where Gardner Lodge thinks that he has all of his bases covered and that he has everything under control. But then, of course, and there's insurance fraud, and there's an amazing, actually, cameo from Oscar Isaac, who is playing the insurance guy who uncovers all of their bullshit, which is really wonderful. But it comes to fruition where, you know, the house is, you know, full of corpses, and all that's left is the son. And the son acts, you know, he's a child, so he has this ability to kind of see through falseness. Yeah. So he looks at the family next door, and he just sees another kid his age to play with. He looks at his family, and he sees that his family is not. He sees that his father is lying to him. He just sees through the truth because he's a child, and that's their ability. And so while all of this horrendousness that's happening at the Lodge house, meanwhile, next door with the Myers, the neighborhood has started protesting this family. And so they're all gathering on, around their lawn and making noise and just becoming this really angry horde, trying to get these people out of their neighborhood. And the Myers are just trying to be upstanding people against this horrible opposition. And they're just doing, they're just, trying to be the bigger people in the face of this adversity. And then, of course, the punchline of the story is, I'm sorry if you were going to watch this movie, but I want to discuss this. The punchline of the movie is, when the police finally enter the Lodge home, and the entire Lodge family is dead except for the son, who is, traumatized. And one of the neighbors says, well, none of this would have happened before the Myers moved in. It was kind of like the thing. It was like kind of like lunch. And the moral of the story was, of course, while we're closely examining the other, there's some heinous shit happening under our own roof. Yeah. And I think that that's an extremely pertinent message. Yep. And a message that is, it's timeless, of course, but I think, now more than ever, we see this great divide of just this racism that still persists and this intolerance for other people that's just so pervasive
Yeah.
and so aggressive. And I love that this movie wants to have this conversation, but there's just something about like the merging of the Clooney vision and the Coen brothers' voice that just doesn't gel. And it makes me wish, like, I just wonder if this story that is challenging, like if the story could have been done in a way that was more effective and more precise to get this story across without, without being divisive, without being like contrived.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I wanted to talk to people about Suburbicon, and I just feel like it's a movie that people are not really talking about, because I think a lot of people just plain straight up didn't see it. but I think also it's a movie to come away going like, huh, you know. So I mean, in my letterbox, I gave it 3 stars. It's nowhere near my top 25, which has 44 movies on it.
Yeah.
So, but I do think it's an interesting movie to talk about and kind of a little weirdo of 2017.
All right. Brad, your number 9?
So for this entry, I selected a film that I was initially pretty disappointed with, but I was compelled, like Brian apparently is, to purchase the Blu-ray. And when I did, I discovered that I actually kind of loved the film.
Yeah.
While still acknowledging that it has issues. And that film is Atomic Blonde. So I have 2 Sofia Boutella movies back to back on my list. And Atomic Blonde is certainly more successful than The Mummy. Charlize Theron is stunning in this film. She is, obviously sexy, but she's also incredibly powerful and vicious and angry. And she sells the fight choreography so well.
Yeah.
My problems with the film stem from its structure. It's told over the course of an interrogation that John Goodman and Toby Jones are having with Charlize Theron's British MI6 double agent. And, just as you're getting into the action, you cut back to their conversation. And that style sort of kills any suspense. Not that you ever feel like Charlize Theron's going to die 15 minutes into this movie, but because of the structure, she's going to get to a certain point. And because it's a spy movie, there's a con going on, and you're waiting for that con to reveal itself. And ultimately, that con is basic.
Yeah.
But having said all that, it's that watch where you just sit down and you marvel in the style and the action, the neon, so much neon. It's directed by David Leitch, who's one of the directors of the original John Wick film. The other director of the John Wick film went on to do Chapter 2, and he did Atomic Blonde. And it has a very similar style of action, but honestly, I would argue that there is no better action scene in any 2017 film than the stairway sequence of Atomic Blonde, where she is trying to get Spyglass, Eddie Marps's whistleblower, out of West Germany and into East Germany to so that we can get his information. And the bad guys want to take him out, and it's all done in a long take. Obviously, there are some spliced cuts, but she just devastates these dudes in the hallway as she goes from the top to the bottom, these 2 guys, and then she gets to the bottom floor, and then there's this other guy that she's already had this confrontation with, who in the previous scene she had taken a pair of car keys and rammed through his cheek, and now they duke it out. And, they're using every instrument in the room. It culminates with her smashing his face with an what do you call it? A stove, like a portable stove. And he goes down, she gets spyglass into the car, but that guy's still alive. He jumps onto the hood. She puts a couple bullets in him. He falls under her car, and you're like, oh, they're safe. But then another car pulls up behind it. So it's like this 15-minute nonstop action sequence. I haven't seen anything like it in quite some time.
It's amazing.
It's beautiful in its choreography, and it's beautiful in its viciousness. And there are several sequences that are nearly as powerful as that one within Atomic Blonde. It plays so well at home.
It does.
And the music choices, it's kind of like I, Tonya, where the music choices are very obvious for a Cold War era film. But at the same time, like when Putting Out the Fire with Gasoline, David Bowie comes on as she's putting makeup on her body to cover up all her bruises, and she steps out to the title card. It still works. That music still works.
Yeah, it's I rewatched it also because that's another one I picked up on Blu-ray. But this was a worthy buy. But it plays a lot better on the second watch. Again, just like how we talked about earlier with Star Wars, where you just kind of you take away all those expectations and you're able to just watch the film for what it is, and you appreciate it a lot. It still has issues that I still have issues with, but when the way the cinematography, how it's bathed in those neon colors, the music, and then the action choreography, is just stunning. Like that long take sequence, even though it is stitched together, it's just amazing the way David Leitch was able to orchestrate that scene. And I'll be doing, just for the listeners, I'm going to be doing a YouTube video because this is top 10 stuff. I'm thinking about doing a video where I'm gonna do like the top 10 moments or scenes from films, and that's definitely one of the top scenes from this year.
Yeah, and Charlize is just so stunning in it. I mean, you just want like every action film to be based around her after you watch this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
You too.
That makes me want to get bangs. That movie.
You two, your love for Atomic Blonde, especially you, Brad, you turned the corner on the film. Brian, you were always a fan of it. You two have been making me really anxious to give that movie a rewatch. I'm gonna, I said it earlier, I'm gonna pick up the 4K Blu-ray to check it out, because I'm interested to give it a once over again. Because I only saw it the one time in the theaters, and I wasn't that blown away by it, but to hear you two talk about it in that way makes me want to give it another shot. So I'm looking forward to the rewatch. All right, my number 9 is I'm continuing on with my disappointments for this year, and it was the Kingsman 2.
Yeah.
There's no secret that we caught some footage at Comic-Con this year in Hall H, and I had seen the trailers, and I was pretty interested in what they were showing, and interested in seeing how they were going to bring Colin Farrell's character back, and just furthering the adventures of Eggsy. And the introduction of the Statesman, you got Jeff Bridges, you got Halle Berry, you got Channing Tatum, of course, and my man, the Red Viper from Game of Thrones, Pedro, what's his name? That guy.
Pedro Pascal.
Pascal, yeah. And so, I don't know, you had the makings of a really cool sequel. And ultimately, for me, personally, the movie just didn't work for me. Brian, you champion Matthew Vaughn and his ability to create a particular tone and the way the universe that he creates his movies, whether it be with Kick-Ass or the first Kingsman, and I can agree, like he does do that. But for me, what he does with the Kingsman 2, the Golden Circle, I don't know. It was too much for me, and that with the subplot of Colin Farrell's character, his return, and having to remember who who he is.
Colin Firth.
Colin Firth. I'm sorry, Colin Firth's return and having to remember who he is and his relationship with Eggsy. Yeah, it just didn't work for me, and I wanted to like that movie. I mean, you had that promising scene that they showed at Comic-Con, that opening scene with Eggsy and that chase sequence, which you're talking about with Atomic Blonde. You're talking about really cool action sequences. The Kingsman films, they have that going for them. That first Kingsman film has that now legendary sequence in the church, which is one of the best action sequences. And this film, I thought that we were going to get something along those lines, but I don't know. I think while the action sequences were okay, because I just wasn't connected with the story, and it just left me unimpressed, and I ultimately was disappointed at the end of the day. And it's a film that I haven't thought about since I saw it. I'm struggling to remember what happened. But maybe next time, maybe the next go around, if there's a third film, because I mean, there's so much potential in that franchise. There's so much untapped potential, and I just hope that Matthew Vaughn finds his footing and delivers a better film next go around. But as of right now, the sequel just didn't live up to my expectations. So what do you got, B? You're number 8.
So my number 8, I'm going with basically a movie that is beloved by the majority of film fans and fanboys, but just did not connect with me to a degree. I do like this film, and it's not in my top 25. It's actually in my top. Well, the placement is number 26 as of right now. So it's right outside my 25, but it's on the list of one of my top movies of the year.
Transformers: The Last Night.
No, this would be Logan.
Oh.
Yeah. People love this movie, and I like it. And I saw it twice in the theater, and just like with movies we talk about a lot, seeing it the second time, I liked it a lot more the second time. But for people to talk about this movie as one of the best films of the year, I guess I get it, but for me, it was just, and don't get me wrong, because when this movie was ramping up to come out, I was in love with the trailers. I mean, when you talk about Johnny Cash and using that song "Hurt" with seeing Hugh Jackman almost in this old man Logan role, it works. Like, that stuff really, really works. But just the film overall, I don't know what it was about the film, but I do want to focus on the things that I thought did work. I thought the relationship with Patrick Stewart and Professor X really worked. I didn't like how they handled his death, Patrick Stewart's death. But coming around on the film and rewatching it, I can understand the choices that James Mangold was making with that. But I do like X-23. But one of my issues with the relationship between X-23 and Logan is the fact that while he's always resisting her for the better part of the film, so it kind of almost makes it a little bit harder for me to really connect with that moment at the end when they're holding hands and he says that line, this is what it feels like, even though that did get me in the theater. But when I'm thinking about it, I wanted to see more of that connection, instead of more of that resisting from his end of it. I like Caliban. I like some of those elements. The villain doesn't really work for me in the film. I think it suffers from what the movie suffered through. But then again, I think this is more about Logan's journey in this film. So overall, I dig this film. I like this movie a lot. But the reason I'm picking this is just because I don't want to say I'm going against the grain, but I'm not on board the way the rest of the world is with Logan.
Are any of us?
Yeah, true? I second that emotion, or third that emotion.
Yeah, I know everybody on this podcast isn't, but I know. But
I
and we talked about
like
this.
it. Like you.
Yeah, same.
Oh wow.
I gave it 2.5 stars. I'm just like, I don't give any fucks.
And I love you for it.
I do like the film. I mean, I have no reason to really watch this film. I'm never eager like, hey, let me watch Logan. I do enjoy the film, but I'm not in love with it the way people. And we talked about it.
Blu-ray like The Mummy.
Yes, I do.
And I love you for it.
Gotta get them all, man. But yeah, that's my number 8 is Logan.
All right, Lisa, what do you got? Number 8.
My number 8 is a film that profoundly moved me in the theater, and I haven't watched it again because it's a challenge. It's a tough movie. It's a high concept movie that just really hit me in all my feels, and that is. Brad, did we just lose internet?
No.
Oh, sorry. Just you guys are listening to me so intently that I felt weird all of a sudden. So my number 8 is A Ghost Story. This is number 22, so it is within my top 25. But what I love most about this movie is that it plays with that childlike idea of what we feel like a ghost is. It follows all of the child ghost rules. You know, the legend of the ghost is, a ghost has unfinished business, and a ghost is present to find resolution. And then it is manifested in this bedsheet ghost with the 2 round eyes that just kind of quietly observes and processes this relationship that he had in life with Rooney Mara, and the way he had mishandled their relationship and didn't appreciate their relationship, and then but also all of existence. Ultimately, he gets to see that he's just kind of part of this life cycle, the life cycle of this house and this place, and how he fits into the universe as this kind of passive force. And the experience in the theater has become legendary on the It Mod podcast. We were at the Angelica, and the audience just was not having it, and they mocked it. They got up and left loudly. And, Brad nearly came to fisticuffs, as legend goes. But at the end of the day, I really did get lost in this film. And the climax of the film moved me to tears. And then a lady pointed at my face and said, "Ha, that lady's crying."
Damn.
I know. Oh, but I think that this is a movie that dares to be very quiet.
Yeah.
It dares to look at stuff that is on its face very boring and very still. I mean, for me personally, watching Rooney Mara eat a pie was tremendously suspenseful. It was one of the most terrifying scenes I've waded through a film, especially because I was watching it through my clasped fingers, because I'm like, this can only end one way. Thin ladies don't eat a pie. So it was terrifying to me, but I found this movie to be so beautiful, and I need to watch it again, but I'm also content to just revisit it in my mind as a concept. You know what I mean? Like, how would I observe my life in this moment? In the dark places and in the light places. Yeah. How would I observe my life in this moment? So, it's a really beautiful film. And my number 8.
Nice.
Lisa is underselling how aggressive that crowd was. I have never experienced anything like the contempt that audience had towards that movie.
Damn.
But the fact that the movie transcended that for me and for you. I mean, we both loved the film. And I think, but, the fault of the in-film heckler is they believe that the entire audience is with them. Like, they wouldn't be making these jokes loudly if they didn't think that people would laugh and people would agree, and I think that there are a lot of times when you're in the theater and you're in your seat and you have the presumption of this is a piece of garbage film and everybody must think so, or this is a beautiful film, or this is an exciting film and everyone must think so. Like, we watch films like it's this communal experience, and we often refer to it that way. Oh, you have to see it in the theater, you have to see it with a crowd. But a lot of the narrative of how you perceive the audience reacting to something is largely in your head. You never know what other people are thinking, and I think that there are probably a lot of people who look back at that screening fondly, like, oh, like I was watching a really artsy fartsy movie, and with a hip crowd we had a really great time shitting on this film. I'm sure that people went away feeling that, but I went away going, this film is a beautiful thought experiment composed impeccably, and it influences me on how I want to look at my life and how I want to create my own art. Like, it's so daring. Nowadays, people can be so pessimistic, so skeptical about use of metaphor, and this film just goes headlong into it, bravely into metaphor, where people like their metaphor subtle or not at all. And I like the fact that this movie dares to just be bold and be poetic and be explorative in this way, and it's not going to strike everybody the same way, but it struck me right where I live.
All right.
Yeah.
Brad, your number 8.
So for 8, I'm picking a film that I really, really love, and any other year it would be in my top 10. I first saw it at Lost Weekend 7 at the Alamo Drafthouse in Winchester.
Oh.
It is Oliver Assayas's Personal Shopper, starring Kristen Stewart.
Oh.
This is just, you hear that title and you know the filmmaker, and you're just not prepared for this movie. Kristen Stewart, she plays a personal shopper. Her profession is to go out and purchase jewelry and clothes and shoes for a very famous actress who's living in Paris. And, she's so high profile, she can't bear to do this on her own. So she sends out Kristen Stewart to do this. Kristen Stewart's character, Maureen, she is suffering from a tremendous loss. Her twin brother has recently died from a heart defect. He went ahead and had a heart attack. And it's a defect that she is suffering herself, to the point where her doctor says you need to avoid emotion and exertion. So good luck. We'll talk in 6 months. And her brother was known for being a spiritual medium and was able to communicate with the dead. And she doesn't have his ability, but she can pick up vibes. But over the course of this film, those vibes become more and more powerful. Her connection to the spirit world becomes rather intense. And she's desperate to feel her brother out there in the beyond, and she's waiting for a sign, and she refuses to leave Paris before she gets this sign. And that's really all I want to say about the plot of the film. It goes into some very surprising areas that was not expected, both narratively but also emotionally. And it actually, it's not a horror film, but there are a couple scares in this movie that really got to me. And maybe the word scare isn't quite the right word, but disturbed. This film really sunk into my skin. And I had not watched it a second time until today, right before recording our episode. I just wanted to revisit it. It just came out on Criterion. And seeing it a second time, I fell in love with it all over again. And in particular, Kristen Stewart's performance. There's a special feature where they have an interview at the Cannes Film Festival where this film was in competition and won Best Director for Oliver Assayas. And, the director, the interviewer still refers to her as the star of the Twilight films. And I think we can just stop saying that now. She has proven in several performances to be a top-tier actor. And I think Personal Shopper is without a doubt her strongest performance, her most effective performance. And the end of this film sent me this afternoon back to the internet, and I read think piece after think piece after think piece. And I watched an interview in which the director straight up said what the movie means. And I was like, no, you are wrong. That is not what this film is about, Mr. Creative. I urge you, if you have not seen this film yet, to check it out before the year is done. You do not want to let Personal Shopper pass you by.
Cool. I'll definitely try to check that out. I haven't seen it yet, so I definitely want to check it out.
You should, Brian. I think you dig it.
Yeah.
All right. My number 8 is a Netflix film. And it is the anime adaptation of Death Watch, the live-action adaptation of the anime Death Watch, directed by Adam
I thought you were
Wingard.
going to say Death Note.
No,
I'm sorry,
Note.
Death Note. Yes, you're right. Death Note.
Oh, I was about to say, it was like Death Watch.
I'm looking
What's
at.
that?
I just saw an image of Overwatch. I'm sorry. Yes, Death Note. A film that the director was announced, Adam Wingard. We are fans of him here at Modcast, and I was excited to hear that he would be helming this film. I was curious as to the timing of this adaptation. This is an American production of Death Note, and there are 2 films already recent, like within the last 5 years, that came out in Japan that were live action adaptations of the manga and anime as well. So I was really curious as to why they were doing an American adaptation like so close. But again, it's Hollywood, so whatever. And it's a Netflix production, so I was curious to see what their take on the material was going to be. Lakeith Steinfeld as I think he's L in the film.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of that actor. Crown Heights was a film that came out this year that he was in. That's really good. He has a really strong performance in that film. So I'm always interested in, and he's also had a good year with Get Out earlier this year, with a small part in that. So I'm always interested in anything that he's in. So really curious to check it out. But unfortunately, as the case is with a lot of adaptations, there are liberties taken with the material, and sometimes they work, to be honest, and they offer a different experience than you may expect, but they work. Things change, and sometimes they work for the better. But unfortunately for me, I did not find that to be the case with this particular take on the material. There are some things that are straight up out of the manga in this, story beats and things like that. But unfortunately, there are also some creative liberties taken that I just feel like, not because they were creative liberties or because they were different interpretations of the material, but because of the type of interpretation, as not really the difference, but just the type that just made the movie not really enjoyable for me, and I found it extremely disappointing because it's a very interesting concept. Willem Dafoe voices the character Ryuk. That character in the manga and also in the anime is such a huge part of that story, and a vastly more interesting character in both of those mediums, in the manga and the anime, that it was just the surface of that character was barely even scratched. And I think it truly affected the story because the relationship with that character and the main character could have been the driving narrative that would have made for an interesting and a unique movie. But alas, we don't get that with this film, and I think the film suffers for it. And there's some acting choices by the lead guy that I just found off. And even unfortunately, Keith, some of his performances choices in the film I found kind of off-putting. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. The other two live adaptations still exist, and to be honest, they aren't great either. So we still live in a world where live action anime adaptations have not reached their full potential. Obviously we know we have Alita Battle Angel coming out, and I have high hopes for that one. But I'm not going to get them too high because I just have a history of being burned by these live action adaptations. So, until Taika Waititi does Akira proper, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, unfortunately, Death Note does not do it for me this year. So that's my number 8. Brian, what's your number 7?
So my number 7 is a film that was saw at the most recent Lost Weekend. It was Lost Weekend 8, and probably a film that small film, foreign film that a lot of people, I don't think you guys saw. Actually, no, Lisa was at the screening, but I don't know if Brad or Darren were there because I remember talking to Lisa a little bit about this film after we saw it because it just reminded me so much of like being a kid and the culture of it. And this is a film called Bad Lucky Goat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just reminded me because it's a film that takes place in Colombia, and it's about these two siblings, a brother and a sister, and their family owns like this little kind of remote hotel, and they're taking the truck to go, and I think they're supposed to be picking up some people in this truck, and then they hit this goat, and this goat may be a magical goat, maybe. And it's basically just the adventures of these two siblings trying to go around Colombia, this little small town, and getting the money to fix their father's truck. And in that journey, because you see that the two characters, I believe their name was Korn and Rita, that they're kind of at each other's throats. But through the course of this journey, you really start to kind of see them have this reconciliation and this love, this brotherly and sisterly, the sibling love that they have for each other. And I just thought it was just a really small, sweet, endearing film. And it's a debut from this Colombian director. His name is Samir Oliveros. I think that's how his last name is pronounced. But it just reminded me because I have so many friends from like the Caribbean, and it just reminded me of them, like hearing the music, like looking at the land, and just the everyday life of people who basically they're not poor, but they don't have the means like how we have, and and how we thrive, or people seem to think we thrive in America and stuff like that, but there's such a richness to that culture that I just find so appealing. That I really took to this film that I just cannot stop thinking about it. And it actually came out on, which is weird to say this. It's not out on Blu-ray. It just came out on DVD.
What the hell?
What? I know. It's like,
is this an old film?
No, it came out this year. But it's only released on DVD, and it came out this past Tuesday. So I'm gonna pick it up because I want to see it again. But I absolutely adored this film. So it's called and it's a short film, an hour 16 minutes. But yeah, Bad Lucky Goat. I definitely encourage people to check it out. It's just a nice small little film.
Yeah, it's a really sweet film. I love the opening of that film.
Yeah,
with the so funny.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, really enterprising young people.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh man, it's so much fun. I really enjoyed this film.
All
See,
right.
that's my number 7. 7. Yeah.
7. You're lucky number 7. Lisa, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is also a Lost Weekend discovery that just utterly charmed me, and that is Brigsby Bear.
Yay!
I love this movie. I love the idea of this movie. So Kyle Mooney plays James Pope, right? Yes, James Pope, this kid who is kidnapped when he's very young, and he's raised in a bubble by Mark Hamill. and Mark Hamill controls everything that goes into his mind and heart and vision, and he has him under the impression that the outside world is toxic, and whenever he goes out, he always wears a gas mask, and he's portrayed the world as this dangerous place, but he's also given his son, unbeknownst to him, this beautiful gift in a weekly TV show called Brigsby Bear. And when James is ultimately released from his captivity, he brings his love of Brigsby Bear out into the world, and his real parents, and of course he's like a 30-year-old dude. He's like a grown man, but his mind is so tremendously stunted from his upbringing and from just being fed this such a narrow worldview and such like kind of a weird kind of happy optimism through Brigsby Bear. So when he's reunited with his birth parents, they at first want him to shed Brigsby Bear and just like be a normal dude and have adult interests and but he sees his world through the filter of Brigsby Bear, and the way that he ultimately connects with others is through his love of this fictional character that was a tool for his own brainwashing. But what I loved about this film is that it's very sweet, it's very funny, and even though it's a ridiculous circumstance, all of the characters are very grounded. And it just plays with this idea and draws it out to its logical and beautiful conclusions, I guess. So it reminds, we're all raised in a bubble from some degree, to some degree or another. And, when I think about, I was only allowed to watch channels 32, 22, and 26. I was only allowed to watch educational channels, and my springboard for understanding of the world, like pop culturally, is like Mr. Rogers and the Muppets and Sesame Street and all of that stuff. But from that comes who I am as a person, and and as much as I've grown, I can't ignore the bubble in which I was raised, I suppose. And I just find this to be a tremendously sweet and beautiful movie. Let's see where it landed in my top 25.
I love Brigsby Bear.
Yeah,
me too. It's my number 12, so it barely did not make it into my top 10. But I mean, it's one that I'll definitely revisit. It's a feel-good movie.
Yes.
It absolutely is. I mean, I have it on my list too. It's right now it's sitting at number 16. And everything you said about it, the thing I love about that film is how you take something so traumatic and painful in his life and you spin it into something positive. And I just thought that was just so inspiring to see that story played out. It's an absolutely fantastic film.
Well, it goes back to like the movie Room, where that kid, he saw the room in which he was raised as this magical place, and it's like the place of his childhood, and Brigsby Bear, plays that out to a ridiculous degree, with James being like a dude. And I love those scenes of him going to like an adult party, and it's just so clear that he's just not even ready He's just not. He's just not mature enough. And and as an audience member, it just makes you just want to protect him.
Yeah.
You know, you just want to shelter him further. But he he ultimately ends up changing everybody around him through his. He gets everybody else to look through his lens and his lens of Brigsby Bear. You know, like the most beautiful thing is that he gets to see the world with fresh eyes and go like, you know what. Anything is possible. And the thing that is possible is that I can make Brigsby Bear. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And he makes everybody around him see the world in new, fresh eyes as well. So
exactly. Everybody wants to teach him, right? It's like radio.
Yeah.
All right, good pick. B, what's your number 7?
So for number 7, I am picking something that is still sort of baffling to me. Last year, I believe I made this my number 1 most anticipated film of the year, and the fact that it's not in my top 10 is disappointing, even though I liked the movie. It's Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would encourage our listeners to go back and listen to our review cast, where you can explore my struggle a little bit further. But ultimately, as much as I really enjoyed Taika Waititi's direction and his humor of this film, I think it's certainly one of the funniest Marvel movies that we've had, and it's definitely the best Thor movie that we've had.
Yes.
I was disappointed in his inability to bring the heart with the comedy.
Yeah.
He did such an amazing job of blending humor with heartache in Hunt for the Wilder People, and even What We Do in the Shadows and Boy. But I felt like with Thor Ragnarok, he took that Marvel style of comedy with where it's like dramatic punchline to an extreme point. There is Ragnarok. And we have Ragnarok, the destruction of Asgard, and we're going to have a joke at the end of that scene. And that just it's not what I wanted. It's obviously what a lot of people wanted, because Thor Ragnarok has some of the highest reviews for a Marvel movie. And most of my friends just truly adored the film. But at the end of the year, I thought that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 blended humor with true, profound emotion in a much more satisfying way, as did Spider-Man: Homecoming. I preferred both of those films to Thor Ragnarok. And you know what? I can't believe this, but Thor Ragnarok doesn't even make my top 25 films of the year. That's mind-blowing to me, but it is a reality.
Sitting at my 28 right now. 28.
All right.
I just want to say one last thing.
Yeah.
The vision, the images of this movie, bringing Jack Kirby to life on his 100th anniversary, is profound in its own right, and I take that for granted, and that's a big reason why I love this film is seeing that Kirby vision realized, to see elements from Walt Simonson's run also realized. It is stunning and ridiculous and amazing, but there you have it.
All right. My number 7, and so this would be the third most disliked film of the year
fourth.
for me. For me?
The second.
No, I have 2 more after this one. So
No, really? Because
Yeah.
you would have
No, it'd
number
be
6
five.
would be your number 1.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. So this pick right here is The Foreigner, Jackie Chan's film.
Oh.
Yeah, that was disappointing.
I don't know.
I didn't see it.
Yeah. You should watch it. I mean, you watch movies, B. You should watch it. Brian's probably gonna buy it on Do You Want Better and buy it on Blu-ray. But,
Actually, it's already out and I haven't gotten it. It's just That
Um,
says something.
yeah. And I can't. It wasn't even like I was expecting anything great. This was a day where I was like, you know what? I'd rather be in a movie theater. Let me go watch The Foreigner. And so I had no expectations about the film. I'm not. I can't even say I'm a fan of anything that Jackie Chan has done in the U.S. Like I'm not even a fan of, Jackie Chan post like Drunken Master 2, and that was like in the '90s, like the early '90s. I want to say maybe Drunken Master 2 came out. So I had no. I had no high hopes for the film, but I thought maybe at least it would be entertaining. It's directed by Martin Campbell, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. And I fell asleep during GoldenEye in the theaters. But I dug Casino Royale. He did Casino Royale, right? And Quantum
Yeah.
of Solace.
Yeah.
And I dug those films. So I was like, all right, maybe we'll get a decent, movie with Jackie Chan in it. But Jackie Chan is like, yeah, I don't.
Second. Yeah.
He's like second fiddle to some other
Yeah.
storyline that has nothing to do with him. So I don't know if, I don't know if it's, a thing where you have them being afraid to have him actually carry an entire movie or a narrative by himself. I don't know where the disconnect was. I don't know what happened, if it was an issue with in the scripting stages, if it came out that way in the editing stages of the film, in post production. I don't know what it is, but it is a jarring experience watching that movie and not having him be the main focus. The movie will sell you that, and I'm not even talking about the trailers, but I mean the movie itself will try to sell you
Yeah.
that he's the main story or he's the main character, but the structure, the editing, the narrative betrays that. Like he isn't. It feels like it's Pierce Brosnan's movie. It's
Yeah.
such a bizarre watch. It is such a bizarre watch.
That's what caught me off guard about watching it too, because I was like, I went in wanting that Jackie Chan like revenge, like his version of Taken, and then you come out and like I'm watching the film and I'm like, where is Jackie Chan? Like this is all about Pierce Brosnan and this whole, spy espionage and all this other stuff, and I'm like, this is not the movie that I paid a ticket for.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and, and even and even when
I'm back.
Oh, well, the audience wouldn't have known you was gone because I was busy talking. But anyway, even if
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Is Lisa there? What about Lisa?
Lisa.
Lisa, join the call.
Answer the call. Is that a thing?
You gotta kick the door open.
Hello?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Hi.
All right.
Sorry.
It's okay. So yeah, and even when Jackie Chan is on screen, even when he's the focus of a particular scene or whatever, like it just wasn't compelling enough. I mean, it started off well enough with the death of his daughter at the hands of some terrorists, but then like everything else, like as far as action sequences, and to be honest and to be fair, you have to admit that when you go to see a Jackie Chan movie, if it's an action film or has action in it, you want to see Jackie Chan do some cool stuff, but Martin Campbell does not utilize Jackie Chan to its fullest potential. I mean, maybe that has something to do with Jackie Chan being at an older age, but even still, like you could still get some pretty great stuff out of this man because he's not. Granted, he's older, but he's not physically incapable of doing some, good action. But the Foreigner does not do that, and unfortunately, it was very disappointing. And again, just a very weird. It was just a very weird watch. Like I still am befuddled by that film and how he is not the lead or the star. Doesn't feel like the star of that film. It's nuts. But
Yeah.
that's what we got. So that's why that's my number 7. Brian, you're number 6.
So my number 6 is a film that came out early this year, almost a year ago, and this was a film that was highly, highly talked about by the one and only Disco Dork.
Yeah.
Saying, stay away from trailers. You know me, I can't stay. I mean, the whole YouTube page is about trailer reactions.
Yeah.
But he was saying, stay away from trailers. Like, trust me. And if it's one thing, like, I've known Disco for 17 plus years, and I'm like, all right, dude, like what is it? Just tell me what it is. It's like, no, like, trust me. And a lot of times, like, I'll go into movies and walk out, and I'll be like, this motherfucker overhyped this shit again. But this time, I gotta say he was right.
Yes.
Because my number 6.
Yes.
Split.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice.
Blew my freaking mind.
Yes.
This movie, M. Night Shyamalan, who I enjoy his first couple films. I enjoyed Sixth Sense. I enjoyed, of course, Unbreakable, which that we talked about soon. And I did enjoy Signs as well.
You enjoyed The Village?
The Village. No.
Oh.
But so now he comes back with Split, and of course the marketing is telling the story about this guy with James McAvoy, played brilliantly by James McAvoy, and it's so funny. I'm on IMDb, and he's listed as playing Dennis, Patricia, Hedwig, the Beast, Kevin Wendell, Crumb, Barry, Orwell, and Jade. So it's funny they got all his names on IMDb, but brilliant performance by James McAvoy. But I'm watching this film, and to a degree, that's one thing I can say about Darren when he does hype these movies up, because it's the expectation. So now I'm going into this film and I'm looking for what he's talking about. And I'm going through the film and I'm enjoying the movie and I'm not seeing it. I'm like, this movie is good. Like, it feels like M. Night, he's got a good movie on this fan. A great Anya Taylor-Joy I thought was great. Suspenseful leading up to the end. Everything with the psychiatrist I thought was really, really good. But then we get to that ending. And I've had a conversation with another film fan recently in person about this film, and he was like, and most people have this thought about the film where it's like, yeah, the film was good, it was decent, but that ending though, and it's just like, but for me, I enjoy the film throughout. Like, the ending didn't make the movie for me. It was just the icing on the cake, but it ties in to Unbreakable when we see Kevin Dunn,
Mm-hmm.
I think is his name. Yeah, Kevin Dunn.
No, David Dunn.
David Dunn. I'm sorry. Kevin Dunn is the actor. David Dunn at the end, tying him in with the Split universe, and then we realize that everything retrospectively that we've seen throughout this film is an origin story for a villain, just like how Unbreakable was his origin story as a hero, and that's culminating in this film that he just finished shooting with Glass, that's bringing all these characters together. So we were actually watching M. Night's own little cinematic superhero universe without even knowing it, and I swear I have not had an experience like that this year, if not ever, or maybe in a long time, seeing that reveal. It literally made me jump out my seat in the theater. Like, dude, literally.
There is no bigger surprise I've ever had in a film ever.
Yeah.
I also jumped. I think I even screamed out the word shit. And Darren was sitting next to me, staring at me, and he was like, he notified me by his intense stare that something mind blowing was going to come up, and it still fucking blew my mind.
Yes.
It was incredible. And don't get me wrong, like, Darren does that a lot, and sometimes it's just like, oh, but I couldn't even deny it. After, when I left the theater, I was like, this motherfucker was right. He was like, okay. I was like, all right, yeah, you got me on that one. You were right.
Man, that's one of my favorite theatrical experiences, that reveal at Fantastic Fest. Brad and Lisa, you've all been to Fantastic Fest now. Just imagine that moment in one of those audiences. It was fucking anarchy in there. It was nuts. Brains were everywhere. It was amazing, and it was again. I said it before on the podcast. That was the hardest movie geek related secret I've ever had to keep. It killed me. Like it almost deteriorated my soul not to be able to talk to you all about that. But there was no way I was gonna rob you of that experience because it was amazing.
And I don't believe I could. Now, in hindsight, it's 2020. So I'm just like, why didn't I pick up on that? But Unbreakable was the last thing. Even watching that film, the last thing I was thinking about until I heard that musical cue, and I was like, wait a minute.
Well, that's why you didn't pick up on it because the film lives on its own until
It
that
does.
musical cue.
You're right. Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
even in the world of Unbreakable, when you look at the Beast and his transformation, I would say that's on a level. That's like a even more elevated level of hyper realism or even fictionalization than Unbreakable. Like Unbreakable was like so super grounded, yet dealing with the fantastical and dealing with David Dunn's powers and the emergence of his abilities, but even down to his costume, it was just a slicker. With security on it, like it stayed in the realm of right now outside your door. Whereas Split, it went a step further with a physical alteration of the beast, a physical manifestation of this character. So it wouldn't even be you can't even be blamed for not putting it together. The beast as when Unbreakable first came out, I wouldn't even say that type of character can exist in that movie, belongs in that movie.
Yeah, you're right.
Because of how M. Night Shyamalan structured that world and created that world. But, like you said, that musical cue comes up, and then we get that scene in that diner, and your geek mind is like, of course, yes, give it to me all over my face. Yeah. That's awesome. Great pick. Great pick. Lisa, what's your number 6?
My number 6 is another last weekend discovery. I didn't realize when I was putting this list together that I had so many last weekend movies. But that is where you go to see the unexpected and the new and the hard to find.
Yes.
And so my number 6 is a kids film called My Life as a Zucchini.
Yes. Yes.
I loved this movie. It's the story of Courgette, a kid whose mother is an alcoholic, and she passes away, and he is put into the foster system and sent to an orphanage. Mm-hmm. And at the orphanage, he befriends all of these kids who are very troubled and have dealt with a lot of tragedy in their lives, and they're manifesting it in childlike ways and wise beyond their years ways and loving ways and hostile ways. And but they are being cared for very lovingly at this place, and he is eventually able to find and create a new family. And what I love about this movie is I feel like, and the reason I'm putting it on my not top 10, so it's in my top 25, it is my number 17. But I think it's so important to talk about because I think that this should be a movie that children are watching.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
There are so many, things like the loss of a parent, violence to a child, sexual violence to a child. People go like, that's not appropriate for a child to watch. But the fact of the matter is, children are going through it. Yep. Children are experiencing this. So I think that it's important for children who are in the foster system or have lost a parent to watch this film and watch a movie that is about them, a positive movie, a movie that's full of hope that is about them. And I think it's also important for kids who grew up like me in a home where their family is together and everything is, pretty textbook wonderful. To see that there are other types of kids out there that are struggling who will rise above it and will also be fine. I will be fine and they will be fine and everything will be fine because there are wonderful, beautiful people who are caring for children and making sure that children live fulfilled and wonderful lives despite horrible circumstances. I was actually working in a school at the time I watched this film, and part of me was like, I want to recommend it to the other teachers. Like, you should be showing this to your classes. But at the same time, there is stuff in it that is very French, where they're just like openly talking about sex and sexuality. And I'm like going, I don't know how that would play necessarily in an American classroom. Yeah. But I think that that it is important for kids to see other types of kids and kids who are growing up differently than them. Yeah. And that they are also people. Yeah. We talk again and again on this podcast about how movies are empathy machines, and empathy really is a muscle, and we need to exercise it, and the way we exercise it is through art. Yeah. And so that's why my number 6 is My Life as a Zucchini.
God damn, that movie destroyed me. It's no secret that I grew up without my mother, and had I had this movie as a kid, I think it would have made a tremendous impact on me. I'm not going to romanticize it and say it would have been life-changing, but I think to some degree it would have been helpful, because as a kid going through being without my mother and just being with my dad, at that age, I'm not able to process it. I didn't even know the full story until I was a young adult. So at that age, I have these things going on subconsciously, sometimes consciously, and not having a way to either verbalize it or having a clear picture of it. And, seeing something like this, I can have my emotions visualized and represented, and that way I can identify with it and say, okay, so this is maybe why I'm feeling like this, and this is way maybe other kids are feeling like that. This is why I have interactions with other kids in school in this way, and this is why I respond to some kids that way, and I'll be okay, and it's okay. And so I don't know, I just remember being floored by that screening and not being prepared, because it's so disconcerting. Like, you look at the poster of the still image or whatever, and you see like these, this what's the studio that does Coraline and Leica. You see these Leica-esque characters, and it looks like a cute kids film, and it's so not that. I mean it's a kids film, but it's so much more than that. And that's one of my most appreciated movie-going experiences of this year, as I was completely moved. So yeah, that's a great pick.
Thank you.
I cried my face off.
Yeah, so did I. And I just hope that I hope that kids are watching it.
Yeah, as they should. Brad, your number 6.
My number 6 is my first Fantastic Fest screening to make the list. I am so thankful that I had the opportunity to watch this on the big screen. And I actually watched it twice on the big screen while I was down there. I caught a press screening, and then I was like, damn it, I need to make sure that I see this with an audience as well.
Yes.
And that film is the adaptation of the Stephen King novel Gerald's Game.
Yeah.
Starring Carla Gugino and Bruce Greenwood. Yeah. It was a book that I never thought I would see adapted, nor was it a book that I particularly wanted to see adapted. But Mike Flanagan, the man who brought us films like Oculus and Hush, surprised the hell out of me with this movie. And he found a way to tell this very interior story cinematically that I really am impressed by. Carla Gugino, she plays the main character Jessie. She's in a marriage that's seen better days. Well, maybe it's seen better days. She's married to Gerald, and they've gone to this cabin to re-spark the lust of their marriage by playing some games. Gerald has decided to bring these handcuffs along, and he has imprisoned her on this bed. And she goes along with it because she's agreeable, but he has a heart attack and dies, and now she is locked to this bed with the door open and wolves ready to come in. And the film smartly goes interior by making Bruce Greenwood's Gerald be a personification of her doubt and her fear. And Bruce Greenwood is able to talk to Jessie as she's tied to this bed and taunt her and tell her she can't do this and she's worthless and she has no business even trying. And then she has a projection of herself saying, yes, you can do this. You can get out of it. And there's these three people in this room now. And they all represent different sides of her own personality. And over the course of this film, it goes into the origins of how she got here and the trauma that she has had to suffer since she was a child because of this horrible relationship with her father. And it's an incredibly unsettling movie. It's certainly disturbing, but it's also very emotional, but like empowering. Carla Gugino's performance in this movie is phenomenal. I've appreciated her work since Son-in-Law and the Spy Kids movies and Snake Eyes. She was recently in San Andreas. She was in Sin City. She's in all these great movies, Watchmen. But this is her movie, and she devastates the audience with her performance. It's fantastic. And the ending I don't love. There are some machinations that have to happen as an adaptation. I mean, it is at the end of the day, despite the narrative device that Mike Flanagan creates to tell this story, it is a pretty faithful telling of the original Stephen King story. And because of that, the ending is maybe not as satisfying as I would like it. But that being said, you have to watch this movie. And it's on Netflix. It's a Netflix movie. But to see it with a crowd, to see it on the big screen, and to get to that moment that really sends shivers down everybody's tendons, really a hard thing to watch. To see that with a crowd was truly special.
Yeah. All right. Great pick. My number 6, which would be, this is the last film of my the bad picks of the year.
Your worst movie of the year.
This is the worst movie of the year.
Let's see if it matches mine.
Probably not. But it does star someone who was in a film that was also early on my list. And that is Vin Diesel's return as Xander Cage in Triple X 2, The Return of Xander Cage.
No!
Yeah, that movie was bad. Vin Diesel, you're too old to be doing that stuff. Like, I just, oh man, I can't, I'm just gonna leave it at that. I don't even want to talk about it anymore.
Enjoy watching it with me, Darren.
I did. Like that, the experience of watching it with you was great. The movie was shit. I did not, I didn't like the movie. I haven't thought about that movie since then, unless we're talking about how much, what bad movies. And granted, I saw Baywatch, and Baywatch sucked. And this beat Baywatch out on my list. Because this movie has so much potential. Like, granted, it's a Triple X movie, but you had You had Donnie Yen in it. You had Tony Jaa in it. Ruby Rose, even though Ruby Rose is great in it, but like she was highly underutilized. Everyone was highly underutilized. Like that movie could have just been so much better. Directed by DJ Caruso. Is that his
Mm.
name?
I say, yeah.
Which I like that guy. I liked he did Disturbia, he did Eagle Eye, if I'm not mistaken.
Eagle Eye.
And those
Yeah.
movies back then were I remember finding them enjoyable, but I just didn't find I found Vin Diesel's Xander Cage corny. At the end of the day, I just found him really corny. Like that's the long and short of it. So yeah, that's out of all the movies I watched this year, that one has to be the worst. And I saw the Emoji Movie.
Oh, come on. Yeah, come on.
I'm just saying,
It's not that bad, Darren.
dude, I will never watch Triple X2 again, and I won't buy it.
Neither will I.
Brian will though. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna give the listeners a break. So we're gonna chop this thing in half. This is the first half. We'll give it to you in two parts. Tune into the next episode when we narrow down our top 5 and our not top 10. So yeah, stay tuned and check us out.